Juan, good afternoon, sir.
What's going on, Josh?
Man, I'm just enjoying some beautiful, amazing Austin, Texas weather.
We're getting to a time of day time of month, I guess. Summer, it's, all that rain that we were getting made the grass look beautiful and bright green. Grass is already starting to die. We're not even in August yet. So
And
hot.
I call this pool weather for my kids. I'm like, let's just go take them to the pool, man.
There you go. There you go.
For you, though, today, sir, I have a question for you. We'll talk about interview mistakes that young professionals make.
Yeah, baby.
Before we break into this, what are your thoughts about just the changing landscape of interviews currently?
It's definitely changing with the advent of AI. I know I've had some interviews where you're talking to an AI, whether it's through a screen, like you have to record yourself or like video record or audio record. And so that brings a different element in my mind, right? A lot of times when not a lot of times, when we talk to people, we often take cues based off of their hands, eyes, expressions, right? Like I'm doing good, I'm doing bad, whatever. But in that setting, I was like, did I do good? Did I do bad? Say something. And nobody was saying anything. So AI is definitely bringing a different angle to the interviewing cycle process. Then you also think about, what is it? The ATS, right? Did I say that correctly? The systems, automatic tracking system. What is the platform they use to, anyways, before your resume goes up in front of the actual manager or the actual recruiter, it gets vetted through a machine.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What that means is they're not even looking at the human aspect of it. A machine is saying, do you have the pairing words that the role description is asking? Why do I bring this up? Like before, many years ago, the young professionals nowadays don't know this, but you used to have to get a newspaper, start selecting your jobs, highlight, and then go and drop off your resume, right? It was totally different sequence than what it is now. And with AI, you can do your resume in 4 or 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Right? You just got to know how to. So again, AI is definitely changing the landscape of the entire hiring process. But what I will say is that there is ground truth to how you interview. Once you're in front of another human being or a panel of humans, there are consistent trends that young professionals should know and prepare in order to be successful. And I think this is where a good place where maybe you can share some of those stats, right? That's something we love to do. What are some of the stats to interview that these young professionals should know and hear as they, explore the whole interview process?
Yeah. According to, there's a blog called Fast Apply. Right now, currently, there's the pipeline for interviewing takes 3 to 4 different interviews, the actual process, which is a lot. That's a big commitment, by the way, too. And so it's not just an interaction, it's a process. You have to understand that. And your goal is to come out on top of that process. Of that, so if you looked at it as comprehensively, though, not just the interview process, but the applications needed for interview, up to around over 40 applications typically. Jeez. I will say, as a hiring manager, I've seen this fluctuates as time goes. I was a manager during the Great Resignation, and I saw times where I only had 3 people apply sometimes, which is different.
Josh, what you said, the Great Resignation. What is that? What was it?
That was a couple of years ago, and it was the timeline where a lot of people were just quitting their job and doing kind of their own thing. And we called it. It was literally in the news talking about the Great Resignation.
Yeah,
and it was I saw that. It was really different too, because before that, years before COVID, even I would see hundreds of applicants for one position. And then COVID happened, and then the Great Resignation, and then I was cut down to 3. And then later on, I started seeing 50, 60, back to 100, and I was like, okay, things are starting to level out and get back to normal. But my point is that it fluctuates too. And so the norms, to your point, also fluctuate. So you're going to have to adjust as needed. So some of these numbers, just take them with a grain of salt. On average, this is over 40 applications for an interview before they normally do an interview. The total interview events per hire is 3 to 4. And one interesting statistic I saw is that some companies have seen over a 40% increase in their interview loops, increasing to 5 or 6 rounds, which is just on.
Unreal.
I couldn't imagine doing 6 interviews with somebody. I'd be like, I mean, by that point, you might as well get engaged because we've been on several dates. It's like, man, but and then the average timeline is going to take well over a month on average, and your chances of turning an interview into an offer are roughly like 20 to 30%, depending on the
Mm,
resource you're looking at there, reference.
yeah.
And so the thing is just crazy. So, I mean, if we talk about the problem too of interviews, one, I love your stories. Can you tell me what's one of your worst interview stories?
Man, I've had a few, right? But there's this one. I applied for a director role. And so when we go in as individuals to apply for these positions, you sort of if you're not doing research on the role and the company that your organization you're going with, you're going to have a huge disadvantage, right? When I think of director roles, to me, it's more leadership based role, some management, and it's kind of like up towards the executive level, right? So my thought process was different. But in this particular role, I was being asked questions as if I was applying either as a data analyst or a financial analyst, which I'm not either one of them, right? And so I was like, oh my God, I wasn't prepared for this. And I had to scrum. And that's where the nervousness starts taking over, right? And then I think once you get hit with one of those off questions where you lose your balance, sometimes for me, it was a little hard to get back on track. And what made it even worse, the interviewer, the panel went from asking me what I thought were low level questions
Mm-hmm.
to asking me executive level questions, right? As if I was as if I was applying to be the director of the legislative affairs group,
Yeah.
right? And when you think about those groups, there are specific skill sets that they're looking for, right? Legislative director, like that person has had a lot of interaction with senators and knows the legislative process, commands it in and out. And I felt like, wait, you want me to be a data expert, a financial analyst expert, and at the same time, you want me to know the entire legislative process for the state. And I almost felt like the panel wanted me to tell them, hey, I sit down and have coffee and dinner with Senator X and Y.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll tell you that I've worked, well, you're one of them. I've worked for senior general officers. Man, you got to think different with those guys. Right. And so an interview where it's just different levels of thinking, different levels of decision making, different levels of problem solving. And so when I was so thrown off. And when I walked out of that interview, after the interview, I had, one of those assignments that I needed to do, which again, confirm my thoughts that they wanted me to do like Excel and F and Y lookup tables and pivots and this and that. I was like, okay, I know some of this, but why am I doing this? Am I going to do this as a director? No, I'm going to supervise, right? And that's the thing at director levels. And for you young kids, you need different skills at different levels of the organization, period.
Okay.
Right? And you're not going to, if you as a director are getting down into the data assessment, development, whatever, there's something wrong, right? As a director, you want to supervise, verify, right? Why is this number like this and not that? And allow them to walk you through the process and figure that out. But that was, when I sat down to do that assignment on the computer, it took me like 5 minutes because, to be honest, I didn't care.
Yeah.
At that point, I had it in my mind. You know how they say you've got to interview the people that are interviewing you as well and understand the work culture of the organization. I understood it real quick, real fast. And I was like, you couldn't offer me enough money to come work for this organization. No way. I wouldn't do it. And so I just walked away. I was like, peace out, yo.
That's what I think. One of the stories, situations I see a lot of times is in interviews, it's really just a conversation, right? Like the whole interview itself, the best way to interview I found is find out what they want and then show them how find what they want and then tell your responses to how you would do that. Yeah. And so anyways, it sounds like they showed you what they wanted initially and you were like, that is not what I want to do.
True.
Which is fair. I mean, at least it was,
It was a good process of elimination.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah,
And I will say, in their defense, not that they need defense, but it was a great opportunity to practice my interview skills, right? And
and
so you can look at the glass either full or half empty, half full or half empty, right? And you choose. You choose what you want to do. But yeah, that was definitely a good lesson learned.
sorry, this is
But
my turn.
if Josh, you've had the opportunity to interview directors, even your number twos, but at the same time, managers and what are the biggest differences that you see or you saw as a senior executive versus a director or a manager when you interviewed? What were you looking for? What threw you off? And because you talked about the whole conversational piece that you should be able to have that conversation natural and this and that. How did you filter out those bad candidates? What threw you off? What were you like, oh my God, this is definitely not the person for this job? Or this is the person for the job?
I would actually say I don't know if I ever was great at hiring the right person. I would just create. I would try to create a process that would, to your point earlier, actually either eliminate the wrong person or show them it's not the right fit. That would, because like for example, I've hired managers and SMEs and directors, and what I would say is in those lower level conversations or positions, it's all about the skill set. Like what can you do? To your point, like the Excel stuff.
Yeah.
What is the process for the legislative process? What are like give me the real specifics. Because you need to know because you're going to be in it every day, right? That's your
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
But to your point, like the higher level positions, like as a director, you fundamentally are not going to be the one that does it, but you are going to be leading people through that process. So do you understand the difference between those? I think I shared earlier or previously, like what I saw the difference in managers and leaders. And when I would interview directors, I would ask them the question, what's the difference in management and leadership, and explain that to me and how you utilize it. And I would just to rehash it real quick. Management's like the extrinsic or external
Hmm.
values or things you can manage, like praises, compliments, praise, all those other things. And then leadership's the intrinsic values, like how do I feel about how's my self-esteem?
Yeah.
How am I feeling confident right now, or am I feeling like I want to hide from the world? Because like as a leader, and the higher you go up to, the more sensitive to like that leadership people are. Get to be directors because they worked really, really hard. They learned all the basic skill sets. The question is, can they really delegate processes and like manage people and build those intrinsic things in people? And so managing them is just very, very different than like
Yeah.
the other piece. And so what I would look for and try to look for in directors is the understanding of that. Of like what, yes, you need these fundamental skills so you can help people. It's kind of like the closest thing to any kind of leadership position is parenting. Can you tie your shoe? Yes. Can you teach your kid how to tie your shoe? Well, not if you don't know how to tie your shoe, so you need to know how to
Yeah.
tie your shoe, yes. But teaching is not the same thing as doing. It is just fundamentally different. I mean,
That's a really good example, the whole tying the shoe piece, right? Can you tie your shoes? Yes. Okay. Can you show somebody how to tie your shoe? Yeah. Somebody may not know how to show somebody.
I know that's what was. I know we're going back to interviews and kind of talking around that. And you talked about AI too. So I think one
Yeah.
of the most valuable skill sets is just being authentic. How, in your opinion, like how does someone in today's workforce actually do that in interview?
Man, I think definitely being prepared
Yeah.
helps, right? Because the more prepared you are, the more comfortable you're going to be about talking. That's one thing, doing research. Though I will say I'm a big guy into strategic planning. So one of the things specifically for those director role positions, one of the things I would do is take time to read the agency's strategic plan. And I would bring that up during the conversation just to show them that I did homework, right? I did my research. I'm interested in you. Really, I am because I did my research.
Yeah.
But I would talk about their goal, their objective that's within the strategic plan. And believe it or not, Josh, some of the directors did not know what the heck I was talking about. And you know how you could tell? They were like, yeah, okay. Any other questions? And a lot of times they were like, the main person in the panel would look to the left and right. Any other questions? And I'm like, my God, you guys don't know what you guys have not read. And every organization, different industries treat their strategic plan differently, different purpose. I'm a big stickler for the strategic plan because it helps the executives. This is what's important. It helps the executives lay out the vision, right? And
Hmm.
what to use to get at that vision. But when you don't understand the strategic plan, you are not going to be ingrained in the process. You're not going to understand, in my opinion, the why you do what you do. You know how sometimes, I don't know if you remember in DSHS, we took those pictures where it said why you work at DSHS,
Yeah.
right? And what people wrote and whatever. I was like, why? And that was a telltale sign that people didn't take time to understand what the mission of DSHS was, what the mission of the infectious disease prevention division was. I could tell right away. And these were people that were in division, right?
Yeah.
Staff members, senior staff level members that had to have those honest, hard conversations with your directors. And when you don't understand why you need to get what you need to get from those directors for the boss,
Hmm.
you're not going to convince anybody.
Yeah.
You're just not, right? So research is important. The other thing, and this is something I think I picked up later on in my process of different interviews, but I would encourage the young professionals take public speaking courses. You don't have to go pay money. You could do it. Look at YouTube. There's so many guys and gals out there that give you some really sound advice, right? Because when we're talking, like I even saw that there's a technique where this one guy says, put your pencil in your mouth and then try to talk with your pencil in your mouth. And what that does, it helps you extend and open your muscles in your mouth, and
Yeah.
that's going to help you pronunciate better. And right. The other thing is tone and cadence. If you're going to be monotone, hi, I'm happy to be here. I can't wait to join. Man, you're going to put them to sleep. Then that's going to be a turnoff. Or if you're too hyper, you're like, oh my God, I'm tired of hearing you, get out, right? But then if you allow, the natural pauses, the cadence to help you emphasize certain words
Hmm.
in the process, that's what their brain is going to be like, oh, wow, he said this, right? And it's going to register. So those are two things that I know have helped me. And I will say the hiring process, like the stats that you shared right now, Josh. Oh my goodness, those are some crazy numbers. And for any young mind, that is disheartening, right?
Yeah. You're up
I don't
against the
know.
hill, man.
Yeah. Let me ask you, can you share some examples of different folks you've interviewed where these people have answered with strong confidence, where you were like, very impressed? Like, this is the guy or girl that I want in that role. Is that something you can share with the young crowd?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you I remember those.
Mm,
Like most honest, I remember the worst examples. I'm not sure I remember the best. What I could share with you is some examples around like the worst. Some of the worst, just to backtrack a little bit, some of the worst examples, which if you look around, is vague all talk, like when there's like really no substance to the answers. I think that's a scenario I've seen, which really a lot of times the person may have the information, they just
yeah,
don't give enough specifics. And so there's this process called the STAR method you can do.
there you go.
You can Google it, yeah. And it's super helpful, but just make sure you're actually specific in your responses. Like if I was to ask you one, or just, yeah, let's do role playing. I love role playing.
Let's try it. Let's try it.
One, I'm hiring your manager position. You have some performance issues with this person. What's the process you would follow to address the issues?
So thinking about the situation, and I've got this employee that has had, continual bad history. The one thing I would definitely do and is, a technique for me has always been to have a one-on-one with all the folks under me. I used to go as far as asking them in a questionnaire, what is your gas station order? People would laugh. But the reason why I would do that is because they would say, oh, I like 7 Up, Sprite, whatever. And I would go back to my notes, and if I saw them doing good, or if I saw the person doing something was off, I would bring them their favorite gas station order. And
Uh,
you'd be surprised how that lights up, right? So in that situation, for me, it's important to relationship build early, often, and to not react on impact. What I mean by that is when things go wrong, that shouldn't be the time that I'm building relationships with my folks, right? And so that's what I would do. And then have conversations, right? Because you're going to hear from left or right. You're going to hear from different people how this person is performing or not. I think your job is to discern what's real and what's not. But you're not going to be able to do that if you're not talking to this person. And if you start seeing things are not going south, are starting to go south, or there's definitely indicators that the person is not performing, start writing things down. Because HR will always come back at you and say, okay, you're saying this person needs to get fired. Why? Oh, did this, where is it on paper? Because lawyers are everywhere, right? That's where it's beneficial to have written notes that both you and the person have seen, right? You agree that there are performance issues. And you can do that easy. Like the Army does it, right? You sign here, date here. You agreed to what we talked about. If you don't agree with it, right on the bottom, why don't you agree with it? And that
Yeah.
keeps things honest, right? And so that's something I would practice all the time. The results of that is you avoid those very uncomfortable moments well in advance, not when the person is ready to get fired. Because that sucks, because you got to think of your team members as human beings.
Hmm.
And I remember, I'll talk about a former boss of mine. His name is Josh Hutchison. I don't know if you know him, but I wonder why you didn't fire that person a long time ago. But that one person was having issues, family, really, heart issues. And that's where the human side comes, because guess what? The work is always going to be there. But you don't know if you can salvage a relationship by being empathetic, by being a human being. You still can be demanding. You still can, be firm. You don't have to be a butthole about it, right? And so that's where emotional intelligence comes in. And it's hard to navigate those things and calibrate at the same time. But nonetheless, it's important to do. So I think I might have gone around your question a little bit, Josh. Maybe I went off on a tangent, but yeah, I think that's a possible answer.
Thank you
Maybe I
for
need
that.
to call my friend. Phone in my friend.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's a hard question though. Yeah, even in that question, right, is like you look for something specific. You mentioned a couple of instances there and drew upon those to give for the response. So, and your response is like, if someone was asking me, like, tell me a problem you solved. Well, don't just tell me, like, I don't want to hear, like, oh, the invoice tracker was messed up, so I went in and I fixed it. Okay, what'd you do?
Mm,
Like, I have questions now. Now I want to, like, if someone was like, hey, tell me a problem you solved, I'd be like, okay, well, that would tell them a story, right? But I would be very
yeah.
specific about it. Like, I'll tell you, when I started at the state, I started as a program specialist one. And I started working in contracting basically. I was paying the bills, the reimbursements and processing
Yeah.
them. And my boss told me one time, she was like, "Hey, I think the invoices are having some problems. They're getting paid by accounts payable twice. Go figure it out." And I was like, "Okay, where's accounts payable at?" And she was like, "I don't know. I think the fourth floor. Like, just go figure it out." And I was like, "Where at on the fourth floor?" She was like, "I don't know. Like, go solve this problem." And it was like my first month there, and I was like, "Okay." So I literally just walked to the fourth floor and be like, of this huge building, state building, and was like, "Hey, I'm looking for accounts payable." Someone was like, "Oh, they're on this wing over here," and this nice lady walked me over there. And I talked to this lady. I was like, "Hey, I'm looking for accounts payable. It does accounts payable for my program." And I told her my program. And the lady was like, "Oh, I think that's so and so. Let me walk you over there." And she walked me over there. And then she finally walked me to the person. And I was like, "Hey, I need to look these payments up and make sure
Yeah.
they're paid correctly. How can I do that? How can I see what you're actually paying?" And this nice lady showed me. And then I went through and I started creating like a monthly report and tracking it and using Excel. And really what I did is I looked by invoice number. I would create a pivot table of the general ledger data by invoice number and to see if the same amount was paid more than once at any point for that year. And then if it was, I was like, no, okay, that's a problem I need to look into.
Yeah.
And so as an interview panel, then I'm like, okay, yeah, you actually took a problem, solved it, and I can actually. And then when you're doing that is kind of just building trust and showing me
Yeah.
that there's enough detail there for me to actually understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
and you can communicate the story. So many times people don't do that well, and so being prepared and knowing like the stories you're going to share in advance, or having those like in your little binder back, like, all right,
Mm-hmm.
that story's out there. I'm using that
Yeah.
one for that.
Yeah.
That's part of being prepared. Like
Yeah.
I can't tell you the amount of times I walk in. I'll show you. I actually have a format when I do whenever I have to interview. They always give like an hour usually. I always want to take up 45 minutes answering questions. I
Mm-hmm.
want to take up 5 to 10 minutes asking questions at the end too.
Mm.
It's always my goal. I never take it to the
Yeah.
very end, end at least 5 minutes early.
Gotcha.
And also make it a conversation for the love of God. Like, if you want to be interesting, you want them to walk away from that thinking like you're all amazing and to get the job, right? If they are not interested in the conversation or if they're not engaged, your chances are good luck. So you got to be engaging, and the best way to be engaging is to ask questions.
For sure.
And so turn the interview into an opportunity to to an interview panel. And so I ask questions in the middle of it. Also, know that you're there to solve the problem that they want you to solve, not
Mm.
the problem you want to solve. And so one of the
That's a
greatest.
hard differentiation.
Oh yeah, like that's what it's like that for everybody. Like we all, I love the joke in marriages now that's like, hey, am I just listening or are we solving problems yet? Like, what's the communication we're building here? Like, what
Yeah,
does my
yeah,
wife
yeah.
want? And that's true. It's hard in any kind of relationship.
Yeah,
And then figuring that out at work is even harder sometimes
yeah.
because you can't be as blunt or direct and be like, what do you want from me here? I don't honestly know.
Yeah, yeah. There's nothing wrong with double checking, man.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, like, one of the greatest tips I would give somebody is start the interview when they're like, "Hey, before we jump into the questions, do you have any questions?" I like to ask, "Hey, I read the job duties, responsibilities, and I get that. Is there anything specifically that's not captured there that you want this position to really
Mm.
take the lead on, solve, anything else that And they will sometimes give you insight into the problem they want you to actually solve. They will tell you how to answer the questions.
You're
They're
right.
like,
You're right about that.
yeah, and so, like, you're there to solve the problem that they want you to solve, so, like, if they're gonna give you the answer to that, it's like the teacher giving you the answer key, man.
There you go. So is it if you're not asked before we start with the interview, do you have any questions? Is it smart to say, "Can I ask a question before we start?"
Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
because that's how you find it again, it's an engagement, right? Like, if I wanna seem interesting, then I need to get that person engaged, and we all have questions about ourselves.
Yeah,
What
that makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah. The next one, and you talked about this one, canned responses. Can't tell you how many times I've done an interview and be like, "Tell me your leadership style and like how you do it." They're like, I'm really like a coach. I like to coach staff. I'm really a supportive leader. And I'm like, that's amazing. Well, like, what does that mean? Like, and they give me like the canned response that is in Google or
Yeah.
their textbook from college, and I'm like, that's amazing. That's cool. I don't understand. I mean, I get that, but like, you're not giving me any meat here, man. So there's that one. I think it's gonna be authentic, man. Like, it's all gotta be a real person. What you talked about with AI is even more important now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so I think that's actually the biggest challenge is how do you actually answer a question and be authentic is the double-edged sword that's really difficult.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts
It
on that?
Well, yeah, I think my thoughts is that the more you interview, the more you practice. The more you rehearse, the better you're going to perform. The more you research, the more you're going to have in your toolkit to be able to stand out as a candidate. Because at the end of the day, that's the other thing that we tend to forget. You may be good, right? You may have prepared and all this other stuff that we're sharing with you. But reality is what we don't know is what we don't know. And that is some of the other candidates may just be just a tiny bit better, or they may have just a tiny bit more of chemistry um, with the panel or the interviewers. I think that makes a difference, and it can be discouraging. Again, if I was, you know, 25 years old and looking and hearing the stats, I'd be like, man, I'm never going to get hired. It's the data is there to show you it is challenging, but not impossible, right? And the one that stands out is going to be the one that wins. And so going there thinking, how am I going to win? What am I going to win? And to your point, if you can show them that you can solve their problems, their headaches, you're going to be good.
Yeah,
Period.
yeah, I agree,
Well,
man.
I love what you said about that. Solve their problems. That's business, right? Business 101. You create projects, you develop prototypes, whatever, to solve the client, the customer's problems. Otherwise, they're not going to buy it. They're not going to buy it.
And then how are we doing on time here? Do we have more time?
Oh, we're probably, no, we're about, should be closing up here soon. I don't know if you
Okay.
want to wrap it up. I mean, because the reality is that with any of these subjects, we could go on and on and on, right? And maybe as we get these folks to come in and talk to us, we probably will go on and on and on just to
Yeah.
make sure that we provide these young professionals the right support that they need or that they want, and see them. Because, going back to when we started this, there's nothing more rewarding than to see people succeed because you help them in their process, right? So,
Yeah, I think that's the whole point. That's the whole reason we want to invite people on here, not to charge them, like it's free, right? It's just to
right.
say, let's talk about you and how we can help you, man. I actually want to ask you one more question, but before we
Yeah.
wrap up, a couple more things that I'd just share. When people don't listen or they ramble in an interview, don't do that. By
Yeah.
asking
No.
questions and like making it engaging too, it'll do that. It'll solve that problem. And then if you want someone to be interested in you, be a little interesting. Like you can do one of the things I always do in my research is grab a couple interesting facts.
Yeah.
Like if that organization has been around since 1900, you can say like, hey, I was doing my research and I was really interested. This organization has been around since 1900. How has that lasted through this it's been around for over 100 years.
Oh,
How's
that's a
the
good
culture you've seen
question.
it trying to transform over these last, couple of years? And what's it like today? And it's almost like that is an interesting fact they may not have known. But you got to give them the opportunity to be interested by being interesting and
Yeah.
bringing something interesting. You do have to be prepared. It's not magic.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah.
I've interviewed for Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah, and their process, man, is very interesting. It's very data driven.
Hmm. How so?
Well, like if you make it to their final round, you're gonna have to solve some data questions because I heard Jeff Bezos say this once. He said recently, if I was to run Amazon like you run the New York school system, we would be broke. Number one. Number two, your
Mhm.
packages would not arrive till 6 months later, and when they arrive, they'll be broken. Right. So Jeff Bezos did something phenomenal in that Amazon he created based on data, and you're a data guy. You understand what those data points do to you, right? You understand the implications and the importance of that. People just don't have, a lot of people just don't understand the power of data analysis and performance. That's just facts, period. But yeah, it was interesting the way Amazon does their hiring process. Like they have their 16 leadership principles, right? I can't remember them, but that's how they want their people to think. And it makes sense.
Before we go, wrap up, one more question for you. You want to leverage your wisdom here. You've seen the work culture shift dramatically, and now you talk about this AI. What advice should you give a young professional now in dealing with the current work culture and interviews and the challenges they face?
I think make sure you bring the human now more than ever because anybody can go into, and I'm a huge fan of AI. I can do things like crazy using AI. But what AI is going to do to them is leaders are going to have to lead, manage as generalists, not necessarily specialists, because AI is going to do this whole specializing piece. But more importantly, what's going to make the good folks stand out is the ones that can bring the human side to the workforce. So be authentic, provide the real solutions that they're looking for because they want humans, right? That's what makes us different. The difference between us and AI is we can contextualize things. AI is just deciding based off of, what's before, what's after, oversimplifying. And I'm not a complete expert in AI, but that's how it works, right? AI is responding to certain cues and certain words or whatever. What AI is not able to do is contextualize. And AI doesn't have the smarts that we have because of what we know is, to be around. And so you have the smarts, you have the wherewithal to understand what the context is into that interview. And if you
Mhm.
don't, then maybe you shouldn't apply for that. Right. Take advantage of those tools like LinkedIn, where you research about the people that are going to interview you. And a lot of times they don't give you those names, but you can go back to whoever calls you and asks to interview you. Ask, hey, who's going to be on my panel? Because you want to research, right? You want to research, and if sometimes like Texas A&M, I'm from Texas A&M, or I'm from TCU. Like, right, you can say, yeah, I'm like that's a question that you can. That's an icebreaker. How was it like to go to TCU? Like all their pride, right? You want to make them feel good. At the end of the day, too, that's like interviews about making them feel good. Rub their ego. We're humans. I got to tell you.
Well, that one. Please, if you guys are interested in the career audit, fill out the survey. It's linked on the comments. Otherwise, hit subscribe so you don't miss any future conversations. And have an amazing day.
Let's go. Good night. Bye bye, Josh.
Thanks, Juan.